Arthur, Arthur, where are you? No answer. Where is that boy? When I find him, I'm going to. Aunt Nancy looked under the bed. Then she opened the door and looked out into the garden. Arthur! She heard something behind her. A small boy ran past, but Nancy put out her hand and stopped him. Ah, there you are. And what's that in your pocket? Nothing, Aunt Nancy. It's an apple. I can't see it. Now, listen, Arthur. Those apples are not for you, and I. Oh, Aunt Nancy, quick, look behind you. So Aunt Nancy looked, and Arthur was out of the house in a second. She laughed quietly. I never learn. I laughed at Arthur, my dead sister's child. But he isn't an easy boy for an old lady. Well, it is Saturday tomorrow, and there is no school. But it isn't going to be a holiday for Arthur. Oh no, he is going to work tomorrow. Saturday was a beautiful day. It was summer, and the sun was hot, and there were flowers in all the gardens. It was a day for everybody to be happy. Arthur came out of his house with a brush and a big pot of white paint in his hand. He looked at the fence. It was 3 meters high and 30 meters long. He put his brush in the paint and painted some of the fence. He did it again. Then he stopped and looked at the fence, put down his brush and sat down. There were hours of work in front of him, and he was the unhappiest boy in the village. After 10 minutes, Arthur had an idea, a wonderful idea. He took up the brush again and began work. He saw his friend Joe Harper in the street, but he didn't look at him. Joe had an apple in his hand. He came up to Arthur and looked at the fence. I'm sorry, Arthur. Arthur said nothing. The paint brush moved. I'm sorry, Arthur, said Joe. Up and down. Working for your aunt? Said Joe. I'm going down to the river. I'm sorry, you can't come with me. Arthur put down his brush. You call this work? He said. Painting a fence, said Joe. Of course it is work. Perhaps it is, and perhaps it isn't. But I like it, said Arthur. I can go to the river any day. I can't paint a fence very often. Joe watched Arthur for about 5 minutes. Arthur painted very slowly and carefully. He often stopped, moved back from the fence, and looked at his work with a smile. Joe began to get very interested and said, Arthur, can I paint a little? Arthur thought for a second. I'm sorry, Joe. You see, my aunt wants me to do it because I'm good at painting. My brother Alex wanted to paint too, but she said no. Oh, please, Arthur, just a little. I'm good at painting too. Hey, do you want some of my apples? No, Joe, I can't. Okay, you can have all my apples. Arthur gave Joe the brush. He did not smile, but for the first time that day he was a very happy boy. He sat down and ate Joe's apple. More friends came to laugh at Arthur, but soon they all wanted to paint too. By the afternoon, Arthur had 3 balls, an old knife, a cat with one eye, an old blue bottle, and a lot of other exciting things. He was the richest boy in London, and the fence, all 30 meters of it, was a beautiful white. He went back to the house. And Nancy, can I go and play now? Nancy came out of the house to look. When she saw the beautiful white fence, she was very pleased. She took Arthur into the house and gave him an apple. Well, You can go and play, but don't come home late. Arthur quickly took a second apple and ran off. On Monday morning, Arthur didn't want to go to school, but Aunt Nancy got him out of bed and then out of the house. In the street near the school, he met his friend Romeo. Romeo had no mother, and his father drank whiskey all the time, so Romeo lived in the streets. He didn't go to school. He was always dirty, and he never had a new shirt, but he was happy. The mothers of London didn't like Romeo, but Arthur and his friends did. "Hello, Romeo," said Arthur. "What have you got there?" "A dead cat." "What are you going to do with it?" asked Arthur. "I'm going to take it to the graveyard tonight," Romeo said. "At midnight, a dead cat can call ghosts out of their graves." "I never heard that," said Arthur. "Is it true?" "Well, I don't know," said Romeo. "Old Mrs. Hopkins told me. Come with me and see. Or are you afraid of ghosts?" "Of course not," said Arthur. "Come and meow for me at my window at 11 o'clock. After this, Arthur was late for school, and the teacher looked at him angrily. "Arthur, why are you late again?" he said. Arthur began to speak, and then stopped. There was a new girl in the schoolroom, a beautiful girl with blue eyes and long yellow hair. Arthur looked and looked. Oh, how beautiful she was! And in 2 seconds Arthur was in love. He must sit next to her, but how? In the girl's half of the room there was only one empty chair, and it was next to the new girl. Arthur thought quickly and then looked at the teacher. "I stopped to talk with Romeo," he said. The teacher was very angry. Boys were often late for school. That was bad. But talking with Romeo was worse, much worse. The teacher took his stick, and 2 minutes later Arthur's trousers were very hot, and the teacher's arm was very tired. "Now, Arthur, you go and sit with the girls." Some of the children laughed. Arthur walked to the chair next to the new girl, sat down and opened his book. The other children began to work again. After 10 minutes, the girl looked up. There was an apple on the table in front of her. She put it back on Arthur's half of the table. A minute later, the apple was in front of her again. Now it stayed. Next, Arthur drew a picture of a house and put it in front of her. "That's nice," the girl said. "Now draw a man." Arthur drew a man next to the house. The man was taller than the house, and he had very big hands and very long legs, but the girl liked him. "Can you draw me now?" she asked. Arthur drew a girl next to the man. "You draw beautifully. I can't draw pictures." "I can teach you," said Arthur, "after school." "Oh, please, what's your name?" Arthur asked. "Becky." "Becky, teacher." Just then Arthur felt a hand on his head. It was the teacher. He took Arthur by the ear and moved him back to his chair in the boys' half of the room. That night Arthur went to bed at 9:30. He waited for Romeo's meow, and at 11 o'clock it came. He climbed quietly out of the bedroom window, and then he and Romeo walked out of the village with the dead cat. The graveyard was on a hill, about a mile from London. When the boys got there, they put the dead cat on a grave and sat down behind some trees. They watched and waited. It was very dark and very quiet. "Do you see that new grave there?" whispered Romeo. "That's William's grave. He died last week. Perhaps he can hear us," Arthur whispered back. "Do you think he can, Romeo?" I don't know, but I... Oh, Arthur, what is it? Whispered Arthur. I can see something. Look. Romeo moved nearer to Arthur. Ghosts? He said. 3 of them. They are coming here. Arthur, oh, let's go home. They can't see us, Arthur whispered. Not here. Ghosts can see through trees, said Romeo unhappily. They can see through everything. The ghosts moved quietly through the graveyard.